Good morning, I'm Jack Berryman, the ACSM historian, and we're talking this morning with Melvin Williams as part of ACSM's Distinguished Leaders in Sports Medicine and Exercise Science DVD series. So welcome, Mel.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks for coming. One of the things I like to start with is if you could tell us a little bit about your early years, where you grew up and went to high school, and if you played any sports and things like that.
Yeah, I grew up in a small suburb of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania called Kingston, and we had about 20,000 people in the town. It was in the coal mining industry, the anthracite coal mining industry of northeastern Pennsylvania, and sports were rampant all around the area. We only had 5 sports in high school, no girls' sports back at that time, except for basketball, and then they only went half court. But I played football and wrestled. I know it don't look big, but I was about 150 pounds at the same time back then, but I was center on the team.
Oh, wow.
And I also wrestled, but was not very good in wrestling. So.
Well, wrestling was so big in central Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I grew up in a little town called Lewistown, and we had a lot of our wrestlers recruited to some of the bigger universities on scholarship, which was pretty exciting for kids in a small town to end up at one of the big universities.
Yeah, and that's the same in our high school. We had a lot of kids who were recruited. We had a little college across the river, Wilkes College, which was very, very big in wrestling as well. So it was a very popular sport.
Yeah.
I was not that good to get a scholarship.
Right. Well, what years were you in high school, Mel?
1951 through 1955.
Okay.
And the day I graduated, I was on my way to Fort Dix, New Jersey for basic training in the Army. I went on to become a paratrooper, and I was in the medics, and that's where I got the interest in medical aspects of sports and exercise and so on.
Okay, okay. So you were in how long in the service then? Another 4 or 5 years?
3 years. I enlisted for 3. I was going to make it a career, and then I decided otherwise for one reason or another. So.
Yeah, yeah. At least it was after the war.
Yeah, it was. Well, I was stationed in Germany for 2.5 years, so I got to see some of the aftermath of the war. And also, while I was over there, I had a chance to travel quite a bit. We could go for $10. We'd go to Paris for a weekend. You know, it was amazing what the military did to accommodate our travel. And I fell in love with travel at that time. So I love to travel worldwide.
Still?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So you're in the military, then what did you do next? Did you come back and go to college?
While I was in there, I was deciding what to do. I actually saved up about close to $4,000, which was pretty good money back in that time. And I was going to buy a Ford Thunderbird, a 2-seater, but Ford stopped making them. They went to the 4-seater, and I said, I don't want to buy a 4-seat car. So I said, what will I do with it? Well, maybe I'll try college. So interestingly, the $4,000 paid for my whole way through college.
Wow.
Back then, $700, room, board, tuition, everything, $700 for my freshman year. Incredible.
And so where did you go?
I went to a small teachers college, East Stroudsburg State Teachers College in Pennsylvania.
Very well. Yeah. I went to Lock Haven.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, well, I wrestled against Lock Haven. I wrestled in college.
Yeah,
and,
they were good.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of my close friends now, the coach at Old Dominion University, is Gray Simons, who is Olympic
I knew him
champion.
very well. Yeah. Actually, he was my advisor.
Is that right?
At Lock Haven.
No kidding.
Yes, yes.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, because I was there in 65 to 69.
Okay.
He left shortly thereafter.
Yeah. He was coaching there. And
I'll be darned. Well, tell him I said hello.
I will. I see him periodically.
And his advisor, Hubert Jack,
Yes.
was very, very well known.
He was phenomenal. His name was known all over Pennsylvania.
Yes, yeah. We now have Jack Stadium at Lock Haven.
Is that right?
Named after him.
Yeah.
And he was my first advisor, and then when he retired, Gray Simons took over.
Yeah. And
So,
Lock Haven was right in the middle of Pennsylvania where all the wrestling was really big. Bellefonte High School and so forth.
Yeah. So you did a degree, an undergrad degree at East Stroudsburg, and what was your next stop?
I went on for my master's degree at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio.
Yeah.
And back then in Pennsylvania, they wanted you to have your master's degree for teaching within a couple of years after getting a teaching job. So I said, well, I'll get it out of the way. And I went down there and I became an assistant coach for the wrestling team and taught gymnastics and a number of other physical education classes. And I fell in love with college teaching. After I graduated there, it was in 1 year, I went to Reading High School in Reading, Pennsylvania, and coached football and coached wrestling there for 2 years, but I wanted to get on the college level, and that's when I decided maybe I'll go on for my Ph.D.
And then where did you go?
I went to the University of Maryland, and my intent was to get my Ph.D. degree and go on and do what my professors did at East Stroudsburg, teach and coach and that. But then I fell in love with research. David Clarke, the son of
very well.
Yeah, son of H. Harrison Clarke.
I went to Maryland too.
Did
this
you?
is turning out to be old home week.
That's
here.
amazing.
I did my Ph.D. at Maryland.
Did you?
With Marv Eiler.
Okay, yeah. Well, Dr. Eiler was one of my professors there. Historical research and so forth. And
Burris Hoosman.
Burris Hoosman, yeah.
Yeah, you were in a great lab. Dave Clarke, that was one of the top labs.
Yeah, Dave did a great job. I was his first doctoral student. He had just come there. And he and David Kelly, who taught kinesiology and biomechanics, he was one of my profs as well. So back then we did a diverse field. We took, sports psychology, sport biomechanics, sport physiology, and so forth. So we covered all the areas, and we came out as a kind of a general practitioner in exercise science. And a friend of mine, Bill Casey, and I set up a program where we could do an exercise science type background. I took biochemistry and so forth. And it really worked out. I think it was one of the first semi-exercise science programs in the country.
Yeah, what years were you at Maryland?
1965 through 1968.
Okay.
And fortunately, I was going there as a graduate assistant, but a teaching position opened up, so they gave me an instructor position on the staff, which was nice because it kind of tripled the salary.
A little extra money.
Yeah, it was very good. And plus, they paid tuition and so forth, so it was a good deal. So I was planning to be there about 2 years, but I ended up being there 3 years to get all the coursework in through summers and so forth. So.
And College Park, what a neat, it was a neat place.
Great place.
Close to D.C. and Baltimore.
Well, the thing I fell in love with was the National Library of Medicine was only about 4 or 5 miles away.
I used that myself in Beltsville.
Yeah, and that's when they came up with the computerized literature search. Because before that, if I wanted to research something, you go to Indicus Medicus, and you just go scan through, read page by page. But this was absolutely great. Computerized search, I can't believe it.
Yeah, that happened to me too. I actually did some research up there. At that library.
Well, you pretty much had everything in the world there.
Yeah.
So you had access to...
You had the Smithsonian, Library of Congress.
Everything. It was
perfect.
Fantastic place.
So you get your Ph.D. Next job?
Next step, I took a job at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And when I went down there wasn't much to the college. Only a few buildings, but they were building a brand new health and physical education building. And they said when it's built, we have a laboratory, you can design it and so forth. So it took 2 years to get the building built, but when we moved into it, it was state-of-the-art, and we had some of the best equipment, the automated oxygen analyzer and so forth and everything. So we had some of the top of the notch equipment there and so forth, and that worked out pretty well. I started continuing my research. My doctoral dissertation focused on alcohol and performance, so I continued to research there as well, but also got into other things. We had some physicians down there working with a semi-pro team, and back then amphetamines and so forth were kind of rampant in sports, so we did some research with amphetamines and caffeine and so forth. So it was kind of a good place to start, and the place has grown tremendously since then.
Yeah, and you've been there ever since? Or you're retired now, you said. But
retired, and I kept an office in there.
You stayed there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And stayed there. I had chances to move on, but I kind of liked the people I was working with, the students and so forth, just in a great location, temperature-wise and weather-wise and so forth. So Virginia Beach was right next door. So
I want to come back to your research in
Okay.
drugs and so forth.
Yeah.
But when along the way did you become aware of the American College of Sports Medicine? And
Yeah, well, back then the big place for us to present our research was at the AFERD meeting, American Alliance of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. And in 1969, I presented my research at Boston and so forth. And over that period of time, then I saw some information about the American College of Sports Medicine, so I kind of inquired. And one of my former advisors at East Stroudsburg State Teachers College, Dr. Frank Sill, was very active in the club, and he encouraged me to join. So I joined in 1972, and my first convention I went to was in 1974 in Knoxville, Tennessee. And what was nice about that was if you go to the AFERD meeting, you had certain research sections and so forth. But at the ACSM meeting, everything was science-based, research-based relative to sports medicine and so forth. But the nice thing about that was you only had one program at a time. So you didn't have to decide between 20 different programs that you want to go to.
It's unlike today, too.
Right, it's wonderful today, but there's five things you want to see at one time.
So they were still having one session at a time?
Yeah, that was 1974.
Wow. Okay.
And everybody was accommodated in one hotel, the Hyatt Hotel. And
wow.
Yeah, I remember that.
So you got to meet a lot of the early leaders of the college.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there.
Jack Wilmore, Dave Costel, Carl Gisolfi, Dave Lamb, go on and on.
Tipton.
Tipton, And Tip,
Fantastic.
I saw Tipton here. He still comes to the convention.
Yes, I had dinner with him last night.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
So still when you come in, I come into my office and I look across, I can see your book on my shelf on drugs and sports.
Yeah.
I think that was the title or something.
Drugs and Athletic Performance.
And I think you did another one after that.
Yeah, I've done some follow-ups. My second book was Nutritional Aspects of Human Physical and Athletic Performance. When I was reviewing the research for drugs, I found a lot of nutrient supplements that athletes were taking, so I went in that route as well. Then I went off and wrote a couple books on beyond training, how athletes enhance performance legally and illegally, and ergogenic, the ergogenics
the
edge,
other one I
and
have.
so forth.
That was good. Ergogenic aids or something like that.
Yeah, it was called the ergogenics edge. You know, ergogenic aids, the performance enhancing substances today is the word used.
Well, you were one of the first ones to really do a lot of research in that field.
Yeah, there was some before, but that was the focus of my lab, was looking at different substances. And we looked at caffeine, ginseng, various nutritional supplements over the years. So that I just had an interest in that. I think that goes back to high school. When I went for wrestling, I saw some of the first-class wrestlers who were taking this mixture. It was tea laced with honey, so they're getting carbohydrate and getting a little bit of caffeine and so forth and so forth. And I had some experiences in the military where I saw some people using alcohol who thought they were now supermen. And there's all that thing about alcohol enhancing performance. So that's how I got into performance enhancing substances. That I was always interested into. What do athletes use above and beyond training to try to get that edge in sport? And it continues today. There's all kinds of things out there. You pick up a fitness magazine or so, and you see numerous ads for various supplements and so forth.
Have you continued any of your research after you've retired, or did you just sort of stop?
I kind of pretty much stopped because I left the laboratory. I stayed with about one or two studies in there afterwards to finish up. But then I pretty much turned, I have a couple of books going at that time, so I could turn my attention to just keep those going. They were consuming pretty much all your evenings and weekends and so forth, so it was kind of nice to retire and devote your time to that.
Yeah, and
so.
what are you writing about?
Basically, the ergogenics stuff and
Okay.
nutritional. I have a book called Nutrition for Health, Fitness, and Sport that's going into its 10th edition.
Oh my!
And I'm just taking on some co-authors now to. I want to phase out of that as well. So I can,
Wow, 10th edition.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's almost unheard of these days.
Yeah, about every 3 years we turn it out. The first one came out about early 1980s.
Is that with Human Kinetics?
That's
or
with
who's it
McGraw-Hill.
McGraw-Hill.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's an all-time winner, I think.
Yeah.
And when was the first edition?
About 1983, I think it came
Okay,
out.
okay.
Early 1980s.
So you've been keeping up with that literature a long time.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more difficult, as you well know. There's so much out there. If you just
Yes.
walk through the poster session down here, and there are hundreds of different papers on dietary supplements and so forth. You know, so it's you almost have to rely on reviews now. So I'm kind of do a review of reviews, so to speak.
At least you have a computer now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I used to write out all the references on note cards and then go look them up at the library.
Exactly. Now you sit home and you PubMed and you have access.
Go
to
right
it.
through it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, Mel, I told you the time goes really fast.
Is that 30 minutes already?
Well, yeah, almost. Yeah. So I can't believe the similarities in our background.
Yeah, incredible.
Because I did the same thing. It was like, well, I've got my bachelor's degree. I might as well go get a master's degree and get it out of the way, and went to University of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And then ended up staying and doing what you did.
Was Frank up there at that time? Frank Catch at Massachusetts?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
he hadn't come yet.
Before his time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So anyhow, congratulations on your retirement and your books. And
things are going well.
Things are
Thank you.
doing well, and that's great.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, Jack.
Yeah,
It's
thank you.
wonderful. And I know your history of the ACSM is quite a bestseller out there.
Well, I don't think it's a bestseller.
Among
Maybe only
ACSM
one
members,
edition.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, thanks,
Okay,
Mel.
my pleasure.
Appreciate it
All
very
right.
much.
All right, Jack.